Oftentimes, when Western countries like the US or the UK declare that their economies are actually growing, that they're having GDP growth or the growth of the entire domestic product of the nation, it's not actually an economy that's worth any more than it was before. And there are two reasons for this. One is linked to inflation, and one is linked to the prestige of the country and its currency worldwide. I'm first going to talk about inflation. So, when people talk about growth, they mean growth in GDP, meaning essentially, it's oversimplifying, but the entire wealth of everything that country produces, everything inside that country, how much the country would be worth if it was all acquired by an individual. Essentially, that's the basic of it. And it's amazing how accurately people can predict how these grow. They say, we're going to grow by 1%, and oftentimes economists are roughly accurate to what they say is usually what happens. And say you had a 100 pounds or $100 or whatever economy, and it grew by 1%. Obviously, it'd be 101. That's the entire wealth of it. And on the other hand, you have inflation. Inflation, again oversimplifying, is the effect over time of people earning more money and things being more expensive. So, say in the 50s, if you wanted to buy something, it would cost less money. Something that costs 10 of whatever your currency is, pounds or euros or whatever, might have only cost 1 back then. But people earned less back then. So, 20,000 a year would have seemed like a fortune back then. But it doesn't now, it doesn't seem like that much. And that also is done in a percentage, so maybe it's 2%. So, say if you have £100 one year, and the next year, and the inflation is 2%. So you'd be able to buy the same things, actually, in the next year, with £102 that you would the last year with £100. Because you earn more, and things are more expensive, and it's 2%, so £102 gets you the same as £100 did last year, right? So even though £102 in the next year is more money than it was last year, than £100, those amounts are actually worth the same if it's 2%. So 102 then is the same as 100 now in actual value, in actual worth. And my personal theory is that when inflation is high, and this is simple logic, when inflation is higher than growth, your economy is actually worth less, even though it's a bigger number. So say growth is 1%, which is actually much higher than what a lot of European countries are aiming for at the moment. Say it's 1%, and your economy, just to simplify, is worth £100, right? Or $100 or yen or whatever. Then it grows to being a new value of £101, which seems good. But say that inflation is 5%. Or more realistically, let's say it's 3%. If it's 3%, then 103 is worth the same as 101, as 100. 103 being the same as 100. But you only have 101, which is worth less than 100 was before. So it's actually a smaller value economy, and it's a smaller economy in real, actual terms. And a lot of time, when British politicians get happy about the economy growing by 0.5%, or more recently, there was a story about the estimates being upgraded from 0.6% growth for this year, I believe it was, or next year, to 0.9% growth. Well, inflation's actually higher than that, and what's actually happening in real terms is the economy is less valuable than it was a year ago, because it's worth less, right? I know I'm not that good at explaining things like this, but it's actually lower value, even though it's more physical cash, in the same way as £70 in 1901 would be a fortune. But even if you have a bigger amount of money, say 160 now, so 70 to 160, 160 now is worth less than that was back then. And that's one important thing to bear in mind, that growth really does need to be above inflation to actually have a more valuable economy in the end. The other element to this is international prestige. So by that, what I'm really referring to is, if people value your economy as being worth more than it is, or that it's going to grow faster than it does, it gives you the effects as if you were growing more. So people view China's economy as being incredibly strong at the moment, and view America's economy as being weak. But America's economy is actually twice the size of China's economy, right? More investment, at least on an underlying prediction, more investment seems to be channeled by companies from China into other countries than from America into other countries. And the fact that they're investing in a lot of European countries in an increased rate means that those countries begin to regard China as being more powerful economically than the US, even though it isn't, which strengthens their situation quite a bit. Now obviously China's growing at an incredibly large rate, about 7.5%, so it will eventually overtake countries like America. There's one more thing I actually wanted to talk about today, and that is the overall international growth. What I mean by this is, if the value of the economy isn't always what it actually is, let me explain. I need to think about how I'm going to word this now. Okay. Say if, let's not count inflation into this at all. Let's not even count inflation into this. Say your economy grows by 10%, which is an amazing number. Most countries will not be able to sustain that at all. In fact, it's very rare. But say it's growing by 10%. Well, that's brilliant. If your economy was worth 100, it's now worth 110. That's great. But even though it's a bigger number, it might be less valuable. It might be less valuable because other countries might be growing quicker. So say the average for the world is 15% and you grow by 10%, or more realistically, say the average is 3% and you grow by 1.5%. 1.5% might seem like you're actually getting more value because it's a bigger number. But what people are actually seeing, good economists are seeing, is a less valuable economy, because it's dropping in the ranks of the world, and the ranks of the world are all we can really see it as. So China's economy is half the size of America, as I touched on earlier, but no matter how much America puts into its growth, no matter how much it gets up, it's probably not going to match. It's probably not going to be able to match the 7.5% growth seen in China at the moment, at least not recently. So when they celebrate a growth increase, it may not necessarily mean that they're more valuable. It means a bigger number. When Britain celebrates a growth increase of 5%, or an increase from 0.6 to 0.8%, it's not celebrating its economy getting strengthened. It's celebrating it not being weakened by quite the same rate. I hope I've made a lot of sense then. I know I've got a sort of fast-paced British accent, which might give a bit of trouble. But I just wanted to share my opinion on when Western politicians celebrate because their growth is high, when actually the economy is shrinking in real terms. If you have any comments or if you disagree with me, please do share them. If you agree with me, please like and subscribe. If this gets a lot of views, I might do more economy-based videos. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening to my economic ramblings.